Hello everybody, I'm DuckFaden07 and this time we are playing some mono white equipment. Okay, so we are playing some stuff similar to the mono white Hammertime, but here we have 4 Pure Steel Paladins and 4 SRAM Senior Eddie Fisher as payoffs for a large number of the cheap equipments we are playing in the main. Okay, other than that, we are playing Cigar 8, which is not just a hammer used to equip hammer on a creature here, but it's also can be used as a way to equip the shields on our creatures, which can protect our creatures against fury, against lightning bolt, against unholy heat, against dead gone, and all other burn spells, and even let us block creatures to not take unnecessary damage, like spider silk net enable us to block the DRC or Ledger Shredder, something like that. And you can also just attack with vigilance and block with same creature this way. So the point of this build is having Sigard Aid on the field. Turn 1 enables turn 2 playing either Thram or Pure Steel Paladin with having your Cutter Shield, Accorder Shield, or Spider Silk Net in the hand, and that way your opponent tries to bolt your creature, hit your creature, that gone, whatever fury. You just play your Accorder Shield in response and save your Thram or Priestess Paladin, then untap with them alive. It's pretty strong. You're in pretty strong position, and then from there you can play the hammer, the Stoneforge Mystic, some more cheap equipment, whatever, another paladin or another Thram, and just start drawing a billion of cards. Uh, Draw your Urza Saga, which can single-handedly win the game. And that is it. Other than that, our plan B of protecting our most important creatures with Sram and Paladin is Giver of Runes. Giver of Runes is also a very efficient way to do it, and sometimes you have two Giver of Runes and they just not able to kill it early, and then they just take over the game completely. Your opponent not being able to deal with your creatures, and they just win the game quickly. Other than that, we have 3 Esper Sentinels as additional threats. They are very good on the play. Um Taxing your opponent, enabling you to draw multiple cards, try to find that Hammer, Sam, or Paladin, or Sigarda 8, or whatever. And that's basically the deck. Other than that, we are playing one Nettlecyst, as it's very good because you're playing a large amount of 0 mana equipment, and it can get very large very quick. And it it just provides a constant threat. Whichever creature we draw, we can just always equip for 2 mana Nettlecyst on that creature and have a large threat on the field. We are playing 2 Springly Drum. It's a great target for Urza Saga. It also works great with your 2 mana creatures, where you can just play turn 1 Springly Drum, turn 2 Sram into Colossus Hammer, or Pure Paladin into Colossus Hammer, draw a card, then play the shield, draw another card. If you draw another shield, you can immediately equip the hammer, which is very strong, and you're threatening turn 3 kill from that position. So also post board, it enables playing a threat turn 2 and protecting the threat with blacksmith skill and whatever. Just it gets very handy. And we are also playing one of Paradise Mental, which does the similar thing, but I opted to split those cards into just one tutorable Mental and two Springleaf Drums. Mental is also good when we have Cigar Aid on the field and Mental in the hand. We can equip equip it on a creature that was there from turn before and immediately gets the extra mana. And it also works good with Pure Steel Paladin and SRAM, but Sprinkling Drum is also just as good because it's important to provide that early mana boost that this deck can really use quality good. Yeah, so that's it. We'll just I have played 2 leagues with this deck. Other than that, mana base is similar to the regular mono white hammer, just some canopies, Inkmont Nexus, one Ganjo, and Urza Sagas and basic planes. That's it. So I played 2 leagues with this deck, and I had pretty good results both of these leagues. This league, we'll see, I finished 4-1 with close loss to Karug Elementals. Okay, so this is exactly what I was saying before. We have, if we are playing some Murktide or some similar deck with the burn spells, we in that position I'm able to play the Paladin and hold the shield. In that case, when they go try to burn your Paladin, you just counter it with the shield, and your Paladin survives. Then you can just start playing your equipment, draw a bunch of cards. My opponent was able to get Giver Fronts active. I found Stoneforge with Caldera, so I wasn't able to kill them quickly. I needed to just play grind the game, play a bunch of my equipment, draw a bunch of cards, just outvalue them. They did go for the Paladin hammer attack with the hammer, but I had my opponent clearly didn't see I have lethal next turn, so they tapped their Ornithopter, which was good enough for me because I had lethal with Giver next turn. My opponent didn't count on that, so I just equipped the everything just in case and give my SRAM a Pro White and attack for lethal. That's it. Okay, that was game 1. Game 1, so that Giver is pretty good in the mirror matchup. Also, Cigar Aid playing first is pretty good in the mirror matchup. They're just able to turn to go for the hammer, equip the hammer, make 10 damage, and then play the Giver, which just wins the game on the spot next turn. I can't really do anything about that. So that was the game. Very quick game too. Very quick game for my opponent. I was planning to doing the same. I had a very decent hand with Hammer, Paladin, Springer Drum, just quality hand for this mirror. I played Paladin turn 2. There is no much risk of my Paladin dying in this matchup. So I just play my equipments, try to draw as much as possible. My opponent already has Giver active, which is kind of tough in this matchup. Oh, again, Caldera in hand, preventing me from attacking. I just equip everything, and in this position, I decide to go for Kill the Saga with March. Just in case I don't kill them quickly, I can outgrind them. They did draw land, I did draw Saga, so I was in a good position. I was very comfortable just passing the turn and waiting until I'm in a better situation and I can kill my opponent. And I shot my opponent also, drew some usable cards like Paladin, Pitting Needle. I just ridiculously tapped the wrong land here. I could have made the Urza Saga token. I don't know what I was really thinking. But whatever, I just failed in making the token. It wasn't that much important either. I was just trying to draw cards, find either two marches, or find the Inkmont Nexus, find the Giver of Runes, so I can give protection to my creature. My opponent was also on 0 cards in hand, so I was in no real danger. I drew the second Sentinel and equipped it with Hammer, so in case my opponent plays some non-creature spell, I definitely draw 2 cards here. My opponent did play the Hammer, and I found 2 Stoneforge Mystics here, so definitely good position. I just wanted to. This Sentinel didn't really matter much. I just decided to jump here, not lose a life because I had enough creatures. I had 3 Srams in 3 Srams, 2 Stoneforge Mystics, also Inkmot Nexus to kill them next turn. So my opponent was forced to find, I think, Ornithopter, something like that. I went Manriki Gusari to kill their hammer and re-equip it if in case they find another hammer. So I was in a pretty good position, pretty hard for them to win the game from here. I just destroyed the hammer, re-equipped the Manriki, and find another equipment, I think hammer, probably. Yeah. Just wait until I have all the. I was comfortable waiting until I have all the hammers on the field to be able to attack with everything. I just jump with my Sram because I have 2 more in hand, so he's really not that important to me. I now had all Colossus hammers on the field. But still, they could jump. They could kill the biggest one and jump one with gear and jump with 2 more creatures. So I still didn't have comfortable lethal on the board. They could. I could had a good attack here, but I just was enjoying in casting my equipment. Didn't hurry because my opponent didn't have any chance of winning this. I went for another block because again it wasn't really important for me losing those creatures. And then I found the Nettle Cyst, and then I finally decided to go for the attack. Just draw a bunch of cards, equip Nettle Cyst and the hammer on the rest of the creatures, attack with everything for the lethal, and that's it. Okay, we'll not watch that till the end. Okay, that was game 1. Sorry, match 1 against Hammertime matchup. Match 2, I kept decent hand. Esper Sentinel, turn 1 always feels nice. My opponent had run, but still I'm able to draw a card of them casting run, and then they had to minus it. I decided to go for the Stoneforge and find the Cutter Shield. So Cutter Shield, I think it's good in this kind of matchups. I can protect my creatures, especially when I draw the Sigarda's Aid. I can just play this in response, protect my SRAM from Lightning Bolt, Heat, Fury, whatever, and then I decided to attack them directly. Didn't attack the planeswalkers in this position. My opponent didn't have the, I think it was the creativity deck, or probably creativity, yeah. So I was just, they removed the paladin. I still had the SRAM left and Sigard 8 on the field, so I was pretty safe. Also had the ability to make a token in case they kill all of my creatures. So I just let the giver die. It wasn't really necessary to protect it. I just go for construct token. I had I go for the Nettletist, draw Hammer, draw a bunch of the creatures, and try to force my opponent to just immediately have some answers or die. I go for the equip on Esper Sentinel, attack with both of my creatures, forcing them to react. They had Teferi, so kill my SRAM. I jumped the construct, and my opponent was on 1 life. Here, sect clue. They had 2 tokens, and didn't drew into probably they're trying to find the creativity or something. They didn't find it, and that was it. Game 1. I had to mulligan first hand because I had 2 colorless hands. Game 2, I started with 2 Giver of Runes, and it's just a good thing to have. Just a good thing to have against these kind of decks. Also to hold Moonlight, in case it really is the creativity. So just played both Sigard 8 and Giver of Runes and killed their Teferi. They decide to go for the Sigard 8, and I was in position with the 2 givers active and just making construct tokens, holding the Hollowed Moonlight in case they go for creativity. So they had a lot of to deal with. It's definitely not easy for this kind of deck to get out of this kind of situation. I just turn my Inkmot into creature to get more damage through, and my opponent concedes with 7 cards in hand. Okay, that was game 2. We'll watch the save the loss for the last game. Okay. Playing Esper Sentinel turn 1 always feels, as I said, always feels great in this deck. Your opponent is killing it, but you're getting an extra card in your hand, which is a fine trade. Okay, I just go Stoneforge, find an Nettletist, which will probably make my opponent want to kill the Stoneforge. They always fear the Kaldra. So I just play the Nettletist so I can start pressuring my opponent because I didn't have the Paladins, the Srams this game. So I was forced to play it kind of differently. Okay, I did find the Paladin. I had a bunch of equipments in hand, so I just played all of them, and my opponent just conceded when I started playing all these equipments, and that was it. Yeah, so I could have just equipped I equipped the germ token with Paradise Mantle, get myself mana, play both of the hammers, the Cattle's Shield, attack with Vigilance, and yeah, or have the Inkmot Nexus for attack immediately or the next turn. So it was in a pretty they were in a pretty unfavorable position and conceded the game. So very quick game one against Murktide opponent. Game two. Okay, again, I just like these kind of Sigarda Aid shield hands where I'm able to play my creature turn 2, protected immediately with a Cordal Shield, especially against these matchups that play burn spells like Murktide, which is, as you know, a very common matchup. So I just play my Giver, hold Blacksmith Skill and the Shield. So I have two ways to protect it. No big pressure from my opponent, just this one Ledger Shredder. They didn't even counter the Sanctifier, so I had the Giver active and the Sanctifier, so pretty safe as things currently stand. Um, Drew into Urza Saga, still no Paladin, no Sram, so I just played another Giver, still holding the shield, the skill, and my opponent goes for the dress down, tries to get rid of the Sanctifier. I went for the blacksmith skill, so my Sanctifier survives. I also had the Accorder Shield, but I decided to save it in case I draw the Paladin or draw the Sram. I am playing a bunch of planes, basic planes in a deck. Both of the gears were active, but unfortunately my opponent played engineered explosives on one. I was holding another cigar aid in the hand, which was probably pretty relevant, and my opponent wasn't forced to go for crack explosives, but they decided to play the Jaggerite Channeler, so it was pretty good that I waited, because now if they want to break the explosives, they have to kill their own Channeler. I go Blacksmith Kill, which I was saving in hand to save the hammer, but my opponent goes Archmage Charm on it, so I'm not able to save it, but I get 2 damage through, and my opponent has to kill their own channeler. And I still have the second cigar aid in hand, so I just have to draw another hammer, or maybe something else. Unfortunately, I draw all my 2 white mana spells, so I wasn't able to play anything. My opponent started getting some Ledger Shredder triggers, and they found the second Ledger Shredder plus the Mishra's Bubble. It's pretty good for them in this position. They're able to get rid of the. Okay, so my opponent goes subtlety on my Stonefort Mystic, and that's definitely was just ending this match game 2. Okay, but game 3, again I was forced to mulligan, but keeping definitely hands I want to have against my opponent. It's again what I was saying that I like in this matchup, and you will best see this game. So I'm just able to play the Pure Steel Paladin, hold the Cutter's Shield, and it's just working definitely great as I want it. Just working as I imagine it to work, and it was my plan entire time just to to do this, to play the Cutter Shield in response to Bolt, save my Paladin, untap with two Colossus Hammers in hand. My opponent decides not to block the Paladin and then concedes the game after me casting the Paladin. That was it. Okay, that was the Murktide opponent. We'll now watch the last game and then the defeat. Okay, this time playing second, having a decent hand. Esper Sentinel is decent against Burn. No Hammer, no Paladin, no SRAM, unfortunately, but um, two Esper Sentinels is not nothing. So I had the Cutter's Shield to protect the Sentinel, and I was able to play it on one of the Sentinels, so I'm able to block the Goblin Guide. I did find the Colossus Hammer, making my opponent jump with the guide. They played the Boros Charm, giving me two cards in hand, but they're also just on two low cards in hand, and I'm on two high life with another hammer. So they had to jump both of my creatures, and the next turn I'm again holding the lethal, so that was it. That was game one from my burn opponent. Game two, I mulliganed to six. Didn't even get the good six cards, but it had some potential in case I draw uh, I draw some good cards. Unfortunately, didn't, so they just went Searing Blaze on my first Giver of Runes, and I didn't have much, just Giver and the Blacksmith skill to protect my Giver, which really does nothing against them just burning me. And I gave Indestructible to my Giver, so I was able to both counter the Bolt and block the Monastery Spear for a turn, which gave me hope I could maybe survive. And then I went shield equip on my Giver so I can block this spear, but they again used bolt on my creature, which was kind of good for me, but I was just not drawing anything relevant without the Piercy Paladin or SRAM. These spells are very useless, and that was it. So that was pretty. My opponent just drew another burn spell and finished me off at that game two. So we can now go to the final game. Okay, so again, keeping kind of a hand, what was my main idea from the start? Just playing SRAM turn 2, holding the shield. I just feel this play is very good. It feels better than playing Blacksmith Skill. In the main, you're just forced to play too slow with Blacksmith Skill post board. And I always hated that about Hammer, and it's the thing that really got me a lot of the games. I didn't block here, and my opponent had the Searing Blaze, so it was definitely a good decision. Then a turn after, I go another shield to try to draw something, and went for Stoneforge Mystic to find the Colossus Hammer with Vigilance. My son is now able to attack. He gets rid of the SRAM, but I have the Nexus, I have the Hammer. For the next turn, I did draw another SRAM, so I just decided to go for Equip. My opponent is forced to waste their burn spell onto my Stoneforge Mystic. So I just prepare everything to try to take over the game and next turn. Just attack with Ram, make construct tokens, then find the Shadow Spear, equip it on a construct and end the game. My opponent attacks here. I just place the Dolan, my construct successfully blocks it, blocks their Spear, and I just put Shadow Spear on the construct token, play Paladin. It was just only thing important here was them not having the deflecting palm. When they tapped for a Dolan, the game was over. Okay, so that's it. That were all the wins from this league. We can also watch the loss. I won the first game. My hand was decent. Sram, Paladin, and Stoneforge with drawing into Sigarda's aid. I think my opponent was mana screwed this game. I didn't play Harshbringers at this point. I just went for Pure Steel Paladin turn after, equipped with Hammer, forcing my opponent to have the Solitude Ore Binding. They did find it, but I had a Saga on the field, which is definitely enabled me to outgrind them. Just with the Paladin and the Saga, I wasn't able to equip the Hammer this turn, but if they don't deal with Paladin, I have it for next turn, so pretty good position for me. They did get rid of the last Paladin, but I have here now two tokens, two concert tokens. I'm just playing the Cutter Shield. I was just trying to play the Cutter Shield to make my construct bigger. My opponent had one of Dismember they playing, and I go for the Hammer, and they finally got didn't have any more removals, so that was it. Game 1. Okay, so game 2. Game 2 I was close to winning, but my opponent just had everything. I could have played around it, maybe win the game, but I decided to go for it, yeah, and it didn't pay off. If I played first, I would definitely be in in a very good situation. I had the shield in the hand, so I tried to go for Colossus Hammer and the shield in response, and knowing my opponent will have to use their mana to prevent this, and I had the Nexus skill next turn, so my plan was just going to try to do the Nexus skill next turn, so I kind of went all in on it, and I should have waited. I definitely should have waited, but my opponent just kind of had the Dead Gone, plus the Leyline Binding, plus the Dismember, so all the 1 mana removal they play, and this thing put me in a pretty bad situation, uh, especially after I didn't make my construct token. So I definitely could have won this game if I decided to play things a bit differently. But I decided to risk it, and it just didn't pay off. So at this point, my main only thing I could have done is go for equip Shadow Spear, try to attack, but the chances of my opponent not having a removal were low, and I didn't have a blocker for this Sign of Draco or the way to get rid of the Sign of Draco. So yeah, unfortunately they could play touch as instant because my creature was token, and that was it. That was game two, which definitely felt bad losing that game because I had some other options. Could have played a bit differently. I think my play wasn't bad. Tried to force my opponent into killing the Stoneforge Mystic, then use the Cutter Shield. I tried to make them waste their mana. Again, I go Sram, hold the shield. You can see that that plays like just very often. I decided to go for the shield immediately. Try to find the land. I did find it, but it was not a good decision to play the giver. I should have played it. I should have just hold the Colossus Hammer, and in case they try to kill my opponent. But mulliganing and dealing with Solitude Ephemerate, it's not easy. I still had Paladin and Hammer next turn with two Canopy lands on the field, so I'm doing something. I just I didn't block here because if my opponent has the Hammer removal, then they kill my Hammer. They did have the Procedure. So if my opponent has it, they can kill the Hammer and the pure Steel Paladin just with one card. I decide to go for the Ganja here. I drew a bunch of cards, but my opponent had another Bossage for the Hammer, and Karuga drawing them just two cards. It's not the end of the game, but I was still in the game, but my odds were not great. My opponent had to stay back with Scion in case of Hammer on Inkpot Nexus, but at this point I just wasn't able to draw into anything significant which could change the game. I go for the shield to try to draw something, but at this point my opponent has the Solitude, and that's the game over. So that is the whole league. That is the whole league. I'm pretty happy how the shield, the SRAM aids thing works. You could see just a huge amount of games, and the same thing happened in the league before that. Could you just see the huge amount of games where I had the Cigar 8 turn 1 into SRAM, Cutter Shield turn 2, directly saving either Paladin or Sram from the burn spell and then untapping with Colossus Hammer, and my opponent just immediately conceding or losing the game on the spot in more than a few occasions. So that was my main idea. Where I wanted to test this deck, and my score has been amazing. It's just you're playing the Cigar 8, the Colossus Hammer, uh, Paladin, Mystic, all best cards from the Hammertime deck, which is one of the best decks in format. But in this version, you have this Cutter Shield, the Color Shield, which is just not a very good card, but in the current metagame, it's just a very useful card with all these bolts, heats, furies, whatever. So people are definitely relying on those cards to solve the Hammer Time matchup, and they don't expect the Accorder Shield or the Cutter Shield or the Spider Silk net to give your creature reach, pump the toughness, or vigilance and pump the toughness. It's just working exactly as I imagined it, and I'm really happy about it for now, and really liking the list. For time being, I decided against Calder in the main and put the sword on the sideboard. And list has been serving me well so far. I hope you like the list. Hope you like the deck. You can subscribe to the channel, hit like button, and to follow me and some other brews and stuff I do. So that's it for this time. Goodbye. Thank you for watching.